Welcome, sir. Purushendra Kaurav is Advocate General Madhya Pradesh, one of the youngest Advocate Generals in India. He's a very bright advocate. And Mr. Tanveer Ahmed Mir is a lawyer in his own field. We on this panel decided that we should have the two sides of the coin. That is, one who appears primarily for the accused, and Mr. Purushendra. His task is to ensure that once the criminal case is set into motion, that the true justice prevails. So by making them come on the same platform, thought that we will get the insights from both sides. The topic, that is why we had said fair disclosure and criminal investigation. We will get to know each side in detail from both of them. Mr. Purushendra will also give us the flip side, what is all happening during the virtual platforms, because pan-India people are on the panel of today's session, and even otherwise when the things go unrecorded on YouTube, etc. So we will also ask him to pitch in his views, how they are taking to the virtual platform, because some suggestions coming from the Advocate General, the highest officer, having the same powers, same qualifications which are of the High Court judge, would enlighten everybody, and it would give us the right opportunity to move forward. And Tanveer Ahmed will speak on the facets. Before we come to the subject, welcome to both of you. पुरुषेंद्र जी, पहले आप इसका भी बताएं कि आपके वहां पर ये वर्चुअल प्लेटफॉर्म्स के बारे में क्या किया जा रहा है, जो एडवोकेट्स हैं उनके लिए बार काउंसिल कुछ कर रही है कि नहीं कर रही, ये प्रोसेस डिस्ट्रिक्ट कोर्ट्स और हाई कोर्ट में आप किस तरीके से कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि अगर कोविड-19 ऐसे ही चलता रहा तो उसके आगे आप क्या करने की सोच रहे हैं?
देखिए विकास जी,
हाँ जी सर,
पहली बात तो ये है कि भगवान न करे ऐसा हो कि कोविड-19 का इम्पैक्ट और आगे जाए, तो पहले तो हम प्रार्थना करते हैं कि कोविड-19 जहां तक आ गया है यहीं अब इसका अंत होना चाहिए, and now we should revert back to the normal procedure as early as possible. That is the one. The second, जो आपने कहा कि वर्चुअल प्लेटफॉर्म को मध्य प्रदेश में किस प्रकार से किस लेवल तक कभी पहुंचा है और किस लेवल तक ले जाने की आगे संभावनाएं हैं, तो देखिए मध्य प्रदेश में हाई कोर्ट के लेवल पर तो केसेस की सुनवाई होना प्रारंभ हुई है, and every day the matters are being listed and they are being taken up, they are being decided also, like the bail matters, urgent writ petitions, etc. लेकिन अभी मध्य प्रदेश में लॉयर्स में इतना वर्चुअल प्लेटफॉर्म को लेकर के अवेयरनेस नहीं है, जिससे कि हमारे जो ग्रास रूट लेवल पर लॉयर्स हैं वो इसको यूटिलाइज कर पाए। तो पहले तो थोड़ा इसके बारे में कुछ ट्रेनिंग और होने की आवश्यकता है, कुछ अवेयरनेस और होने की आवश्यकता है। एंड सेकंड इज द कनेक्टिविटी प्रॉब्लम। व्हाटएवर ऐप वी यूज, sometime in one matter, if there are 4 or 5 lawyers, so then it becomes sometimes very difficult to hear the lawyer's point of view and then to understand who says what. So therefore, the virtual platform as of now, although just for the sake of starting we have started with, but it is not the proper alternate to the regular court working, regular court hearing, as it happens in the normal court days. And the trial court is concerned, in trial court the working has not started in everywhere except in 2-3 the districts where the IT facilities are available. And if we go to the trial court level, then the difficulty becomes more, and this will take some time. Of course, this can be to some extent to deal with the urgent matters be a proper alternate, but this will take some time. And as far as the State Bar Council is concerned, you asked me to say something in this respect also, because in Madhya Pradesh the State Bar Council as of now is not functioning because the counting was going on, and under the Advocate Act, the Advocate General is appointed as the special committee chairman. Therefore, I have to discharge the function of a chairman of the State Bar Council also. We were receiving so many representations and the applications throughout the state for the friend lawyers to help them in the difficult time. Therefore, under the Madhya Pradesh Adhivakta Kalyan Nidhi Adhiniyam, every state perhaps has this the Adhivakta Kalyan Nidhi Adhiniyam. We also have the set of the law where the State Bar Council can advise the trust committee to frame appropriate policy for the help of for the welfare of the lawyers. Therefore, we framed one policy which has also been approved by the Nyasi Samiti, that is the trust committee, and the law minister happens to be the chairman of that committee, and the chairman of the Bar Council happens to be the vice chairman, and the Advocate General is also the member. I participated in dual capacity, one as a chairman of the Bar Council and second being the Advocate General also. And because the law department as of now is with the Honorable Chief Minister, therefore, day before yesterday, a very comprehensive policy for the welfare of the lawyers throughout the state has been approved by the trust committee, whereby we have made an arrangement to provide up to 5,000 rupees to the needy lawyer whose name is recommended by the concerned bar association. Once we receive those recommendations at a State Bar Council level, then we will directly transfer the amount to the concerned lawyer. And as of now, we have targeted around 4,000 lawyers to be benefited by the scheme. So this is what we are doing with respect to the welfare of the lawyers during this COVID-19.
Purushendra ji, I will ask, either your team can share it on the chat box or you can share it with me on the WhatsApp later on, so that at least if we find good points, I'm quite sacrosanct that once you are heading that committee and you are having the dual charge, and more so when you are having the Chief Minister also, and definitely a scheme which we would be there. Let's assume we will share it on this platform. We are having lawyers from all pan-India. So wherever
certainly
go to the chairman, bar councils of different states. So whatever is beneficial for the lawyers, it can be done. Number one, for the financial part. But I personally feel nobody is more interested in the funds which the state is giving at this given point of time. They are more interested that how we rejoin the process and how do we start working. Primary interest is, as you rightly said, that we all are interested that we should be back to our business in the normal call rather than going on a virtual platform. And rightly said by you that virtual platform, firstly, people at some places the bandwidth is very low. Some people are not assimilated with the working, and then it has its own difficulties. For all so many years, we are all assimilated with the features.
Right.
For the participants, it is one of the rare occasions that we have diverted from the topic, but I couldn't just resist from this part that once we are having Purushendra on our platform and being the Advocate General, we should get ourselves whatever benefits we can during these trying and testing times. Purushendra ji, since we are having two speakers, मैं आपसे पहले गुजारिश करूंगा कि पहले आप थोड़ा बताएं, फिर तनवीर को बोलेंगे, उसके बाद क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशंस हमारे फॉर्मेट में जो हाइजीन कंडीशंस हमने इस प्लेटफॉर्म पे रखी हैं उसमें यह है कि कोई भी क्वेश्चन आंसर्स अप्रोक्सीमेटली 6:50 के आसपास डालेंगे, उसके बाद हम वो 15 मिनट आधा घंटा उसको ही देंगे और जो क्वेश्चन आएंगे
जी
फिर आप दोनों में से जो मर्जी समझें, जो क्वेश्चन आएगा आई विल रीड इट टू बोथ ऑफ यू, एनीबॉडी कैन आंसर. और जैसे आपको पहले सबने बोला कि we are all happy that we are going to have the versions of both the sides. Mr. Tanveer will help us to tell the nitty-gritties, how to unlock the things. Mr. Purushendra will tell how the state gears up so that the media trial doesn't hold the state government that they are not doing the duty diligently. Over to Purushendra ji. Thank you.
जी, तो विकास जी,
सर एक मिनट, आप अपना नेटवर्क चेक करें पुष्पेंद्र जी, जब नेटवर्क चेक करें, आपका बार बार शो हो रहा है लो बैंडविड्थ है. इट कुड बी ड्यू टू मेनी रीजंस. एक बार चेक कर लें सो दैट वी गो स्ट्रेट.
ओके,
bandwidth
is it fine?
No, bandwidth is low. चलो you आप ऐसे ही चल लें, कोई नहीं. Let's start.
Okay. Now विकास जी, पहले तो मैं आपको बहुत धन्यवाद करूंगा कि आपने बहुत ही एक ऐसा टॉपिक आपने चुना है डिस्कशन के लिए जिसकी अभी सभी लोगों को आवश्यकता है, जो हमारे ट्रायल कोर्ट से लेकर के और हाई कोर्ट में लॉयर्स प्रैक्टिस करते हैं. ऐसे जो टॉपिक हैं, रिलेवेंट टॉपिक लाइक फेयर डिस्क्लोजर, ये टॉपिक दे गोज टू द रूट ऑफ द जस्टिस डिलीवरी सिस्टम. So therefore I must congratulate you for selecting this the wonderful topic for today's discussion. और ये जो फेयर ट्रायल की अगर हम बात करते हैं तो क्रिमिनल जुरिस्प्रूडेंस का, this is the heart of the criminal jurisprudence. There has to be a fair trial, and one cannot in a criminal jurisprudence conceive an idea where there can be, even to the remotest level, there can be some unfairness, or there can be some tainted investigation, etc. So therefore the point is this, that this is the well recognized principle that yes, there has to be a fair trial. But once the fair trial we talk of, then the fair disclosure which is required to be made by the prosecutor, which is required to be made by the investigator, normally where the problem lies today as of now, because this procedure is not codified, this law is not codified. We look for this procedure in judicial pronouncement, and also certain like the Constitution Article 21, which also speaks of the right of right and personal liberty of a person, and even in the Universal Declaration also the obligation is cast upon the state to ensure that the trial must take place in an atmosphere where the accused should have all rights to defend himself in an utmost fair manner. Having said this, if we look into the legal provisions, then there are some lacunas in it. The Supreme Court, in the judgment of Madhu Sharma, although recognizes the fair disclosure to be the part of fair trial, but still there are some questions. For example, if we consider 173(5), where the charge sheet is to be filed along with all documents, etc. But if we carefully go through 173(5), then we find that the word used is the prosecution proposes to, like the prosecution proposes to rely the statement, and the similar language is used in section 207 also, where the documents are required to be supplied to the accused, that all statement prosecution proposes to rely. If we consider a situation where the accused doesn't know what is the exculpatory evidence case diary, and those documents are not produced in the court of law before the magistrate, then it cannot be expected from anyone. Therefore, the need of the hour is to ensure the fair trial. Either the Supreme Court should also claim in an appropriate case that in case of non-disclosure of the exculpatory evidence, what is the responsibility, who would be answerable to it? In the present system, there is no accountability fixed.
पुष्पेंद्र जी,
If somebody,
पुष्पेंद्र जी, आपकी ना आवाज थोड़ी सी कम है, ये तो एक बार आपको री एंटर कर लें, दैट विल बी बेटर. लोगों का बार-बार आ रहा है कि यू आर नॉट ऑडिबल बिकॉज ऑफ द लो बैंड. मीनवाइल तनवीर विल टेक ओवर. तनवीर जी, Mr. Tanveer?
Yes.
Yeah, you can start off. Mr. Gaurav will join us back.
The learned Advocate General comes again. So, thank you, Vikas ji, for inviting me on this platform. I see that there are a lot of my fellow colleagues, friends on the platform, and are coming straight to the subject. The question is that the trial courts all over India, are in a very strong dilemma on exactly how to handle the arguments and concept of full and fair disclosure of evidence collected during the course of investigation with an accused once a cognizance of offense is taken and the accused are summoned. And obviously, the compliance under 207 is made by the prosecution. Now, as the learned Advocate General said, that since in our criminal jurisprudence and by the means of CRPC and especially 173, we have a subclause 5 which says that gives a discretion to the investigating authority to what documents they will rely upon during the course of investigation and what documents they will obviously not rely upon. And that is what they file. The point of dispute is that on a number of occasions, we see on practical ground reality cases, which I will, during the course of my talk, I will relate to, and let me relate because we don't have a lot of time. So I will, my friends, relate to 2 cases where I appeared as a defense counsel, amongst others. One is Arushi Talwar Hemraj double murder, and one is the criminal prosecution of Gurmeet Ram Rahim. Since we have wonderful lawyers from Chandigarh, I think it would be an appropriate case, where I am defending him in the mass castration case, as well as in the Panchkula carnage case. I'll also talk about these 2 cases as a demonstration of how lack of fair disclosure affects the rights of an accused on practical ground reality. But let's come to the basics first. So the basic is that, is there a dispute that the accused is only entitled to the documents that the investigating authority relies upon? And consequently, can we sustain a proposition that just because, as a corollary, that just because the investigating officer or the prosecutor chooses not to rely upon a piece of evidence which may have been collected during the course of investigation, is a court of law unable in law or otherwise to call for such a document and also to supply it to an accused? Because under the procedure, we have a system in place, whereas, by the means of Section 91, a documentary piece of evidence can be called at any point of time. And it's not only at the stage of defense evidence. And there is also Section 207, that whether compliance will be stricto sensu, only the compliance of what the prosecution relies upon, or whether the prosecution can be called upon to place entire evidence, including the exculpatory evidence, also on record. And if the failure occurs, what will happen? Vikasji, should I continue, because the learned Advocate General is back on screen?
Again, the bandwidth towards Mr. Pushendra is not showing very clear. Mr. Gaurav, could you just try it again?
Okay.
Gaurav साहब जरा बोलें. Hello. Pushendra ji. Hello. 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 आप तनवीर जी बात करें, मैं 1 मिनट उनसे बात करता हूँ.
Okay, no issues. I will, my friends, then continue with where I was. So the proposition, I canvass before the courts on a regular basis as a defense trial lawyer is always to the extent that the fairness of the trial or an accusation of an accused is a part of his fundamental rights. And therefore, the statutory law is not a predicament upon a court of competent jurisdiction to call for entire exculpatory evidence which may have been collected during the course of investigation and the knowledge about it from any source. I'm sorry, Vikas bhai, I think the learned advocate general is trying to speak again. So would he come in?
Mr. Tanveer, you can start off, but you can continue. Mr. Kaurav is trying to join through some other application.
Okay, no issues. So, my friends, the proposition, therefore, is of great deliberation. Now, what happens practically in trial courts is that whenever a compliance under 207 is made, the next stage is always an argument on the point of charge. If an accused counsel or the accused himself gives an information that, sir, there are a number of documents which have been seized by the IO during the course of investigation, and they are very necessary for the purposes of arguing a discharge, so we should call for it. So we file an application. Usually a defense counsel files an application under 207, read with 91, and asks a direction from the court that investigating officer / a prosecutor be directed to place all such documents on record which are enlisted in your application, as they are collected during the course of investigation and they are exculpatory in nature. Usually, any such application is rebutted by the learned prosecutor by citing two judgments, that is Debinder Nath Padi 1 and Debinder Nath Padi 2, and one of them is a 3 judges bench. And the argument is, sir, that accused is entitled to no document at this stage of charge or otherwise, and accused should call for his documents, if any, only at the stage of defense evidence, which would be the stage of 233 in a sessions trial or a stage of 241 in a magisterial trial. That being the dilemma, the court says that, for the purposes of deciding the charge, are these documents necessary? Once they say that we are not relying upon these documents, so why should I call it? So you are entitled to only those documents that the investigating authority is relying upon. So let's get on with this. So we say nothing doing, Your Honor, then, we would like to have an order and escalate the matter to the High Court. Now, the concept of fair disclosure, originally, though, has always been in our judgments, and I'll, relate to some of them, but it actually comes from England, because our Code of Criminal Procedure, after all, is prior to independence. It's emanated from United Kingdom itself. In United Kingdom, the fair disclosure is an unalienable part of a fair trial. So, if any accused is able to contend before a criminal court that, Your Honor, there was no fair disclosure of evidence, the entire trial stands vitiated and the accused is entitled to an acquittal there and then. This is covenanted in court unquote. You can find it on net also. If you just type on Google, so my friends can find Attorney General's guidelines on fair disclosure in England. So this is one of the important aspects based on certain judgments passed by House of Lords. So in England, it just doesn't work. But since in India, we have 173.5, now how 173.5 and 207 are to countenance with each other, are to be balanced, and what will be the concept of exculpatory evidence? When shall exculpatory evidence come into play? Will it come into play at the beginning? Will it come into play at the stage of defense evidence? On this aspect, my friends, we in India have not been, very far behind. And whenever I go to any court and argue, I always start with a 1947 Privy Council judgment, which is Pulukori Kotaya. Now, Pulukori Kotaya is one of the fundamental judgments which encompasses fair disclosure and unequivocally considers it to be a fundamental important aspect of a fair trial. And without fair trial, there can never be a fair judgment. So Pulukori Kotaya, clearly, the citation is 1947 Privy Council, page 67. And the honorable judges at that time were of the considered opinion that the right given to an accused person by section 162 is a valuable one and often provides material for cross-examination of the prosecution witnesses. The dispute here was, like, for example, in many states, even say 10 years ago, the 161 statements used to be a part of the case diary of the IU. Just it is still in state of UP, it's practiced in state of Bihar, where the 161 statements are not separate. They're written in the case diary itself. So this was a case where there were some 161 statements which were concealed by the investigating authority. Now, the accused called for them, knowing that some of the witnesses had been examined and those witnesses had provided exculpatory evidence to the investigating officer during the course of investigation. And the Privy Council, took up this issue and gave an affirmative judgment and said that the courts in India have always regarded the breach of proviso to section 162 as a matter of great gravity. And relying upon two judgments, the finding was when the court has refused to supply to accused copies of statements made by witnesses to the police, or for instances in failure to comply with the provisions of 162 have led to convictions being quashed. So it is way back, my friends, in Pulukori Kotaya that we solemnly recognize the principle of comprehensive fair disclosure of evidence collected, and evidence cannot be concealed. If the investigating officer may collect exculpatory evidence, he may collect inculpatory evidence. He has to place them both on record. But what we see in serious contended cases or otherwise, the investigating authorities tend to go in one way, which is that we have an FIR and we have to now, collect evidence and file a charge sheet. If they collect exculpatory evidence, they say, oh, no. The accused will call for his own evidence. He will, do his own investigation. He will call for his own defense, and it is upon him to prove that he is innocent. We will not investigate. The tendency is that we will not investigate, or even if we investigate, whether the accused is innocent or not. That is what I have seen in a number of cases where I have been a defense counsel, that the accused must fend for himself. We will prosecute him and place this evidence on record. Now, my friends, the 1947 judgment of Pulukori Kotaya was followed immediately by two very landmark judgments in 1954. One was Habib Mohammed versus State of Mysore, and one was a judgment called Purushottam Jetanand. So both these judgments again reiterated Pulukori Kotaya and said that at no point of time should the accused be put in a situation where the exculpatory evidence or anything that brings his defense into play is concealed, is not supplied to him, and therefore that would be a violation of the entire trial, and the trial would stand vitiated and the accused, would be acquitted on that ground alone. Many years thereafter passed, but the trial courts almost all times in every case have been in a dilemma as to what kind of evidence is to be supplied and whether anything is to be supplied beyond what the police relies upon. Now, my friends, I would like, just as the learned advocate general relied upon Manu Sharma's case, Manu Sharma's case is followed by Shashikala's case, and both are judgments coming from the Supreme Court. But one of the most interesting judgments, expounding the jurisprudence of fair disclosure is a Bombay High Court single judge written by a famous judge called Justice A.M. Thipse in a train blast case coming out of 2013. The judgment is by the name of Kamal Ahmed Mohammad Vakil versus State of Maharashtra. And it's a reported judgment of 2013, Criminal Law Journal, I think pages 329. And this is a case which presented some very interesting facts. The accused persons at the beginning of 2007, when 2007 compliance was made and the matter was posted for an argument on point of charge, accused said that, sir, in the remand applications, the investigating authorities, one of the grounds for police remand has been that they are in possession of the call detailed records of accused persons. So therefore, call detailed records of accused persons should be supplied to them. The trial court said, sorry, you will be only entitled to the material that the learned prosecutor relies upon, and we will not give you any document. Now, once the charge was framed, again, another application was made that, sir, we will not be able to conduct an effective cross-examination, especially of the investigating officer, in order to show that the arrest was nefarious, arrest was illegal, and the indictment was false, lest, Your Honor, you supply these documents to us. Again, the court said, nothing doing, you are not entitled to any document beyond compliance under 207. Now, if any document is to be called, please try your luck at the stage of 233. Come the stage of 233, my friends, the accused persons made an application again. Again, the application was noted. This matter was escalated by the accused to the Honorable High Court, and the Honorable High Court then deliberated upon the concept of fair disclosure. Now, in one of the very interesting observations in Kamal Ahmed Mohammad Vakil, and I would like to read 2 lines from that judgment, the Honorable High Court was of the considered opinion that the right of fair disclosure and the right of an accused to call for an exculpatory piece of evidence is so important that without such a right being exercised affirmatively, the cross-examination will become meaningless. And in the words of the Honorable High Court, the exact observations were that it is not that the documents called for by the accused must be called just for the heck of asking, but surely that the prosecution is not relying on such documents cannot be a consideration that should weigh in deciding such an application made by the accused. So Honorable High Court, after interpreting Manu Sharma and Shashikala's case, going back to Pulukori Kotaya, Habib Muhammad and Purushottam Jetanand, was of the considered opinion that just because the prosecutor chooses not to rely upon a particular piece of evidence collected during the course of investigation, the hands of the court were not tied. Similarly, the hands of the accused were not tied. If there is a document which is important, after all, how does a person demolish a prosecution case? The defense of the accused is not, my friends, developed at the stage of 233. That is when the stage of defense evidence comes into play. The defense of an accused is right from 207. After 207 comes the state of charge. That is when the accused gives his defense and says that, Your Honor, I ought not to be put to a trial because I am an innocent and this is my defense. The next most important aspect is that if in a cross-examination, in order to be an effective cross-examination, will be a nullity. If the cross-examiner is denied the supply of those documents on the basis of which the statement of a particular witness is to be rebutted, is to be negated, is to be proved to a court of law that the man is lying. And therefore, such documents, if with any agency, can be called by the exercise of power under 91, and if such document is in the case diary of the accused, collected by the investigating authority, is in the case diary of the IO, collected by him during the course of investigation, surely the court should be calling for a document and asking the IO to place the document on the court record and also to give a copy to the accused. In this perspective, my friends, I would like to take you to two lines, which is that where the Honorable High Court says there may be cases for an effective cross-examination of a witness. The cross-examiner would require certain documents in his hand. And without availability of such documents, the rights and obligations of a cross-examiner under sections 155 subclause 3 and 145 of the Indian Evidence Act cannot be effectively discharged or exercised by him. Now, my friends, therefore, if the exculpatory evidence is not in the hand of a cross-examining lawyer, how is he supposed to defend his client? And can we have a process that where the prosecution witness comes, he testifies, he goes back, prosecution evidence is closed, now comes defense evidence. In the defense evidence, the court allows some documents. Do I then file an application under 311?
Mr. Tanveer, sorry to bother. Some people are asking slightly a speed of delivery be slowed down.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Because the judges understand very fast. We are all lawyers who tend to have the delivery system slow.
Okay. So my friends, therefore, the importance is that in such a situation where the prosecution witnesses have already been examined, they have gone home, and now I get the documents at the stage of defense evidence, will I now call 20 witnesses again in defense evidence and confront them with documents? What kind of a trial will therefore ensue? Now, therefore, in Kamal Ahmed Muhammad Wakil, when Manu Sharma's case was deliberated, when it was read and when it was relied upon, the Honorable Supreme Court in Manu Sharma's case, as relied upon, said that while holding that the right of an accused with regard to disclosure of documents is a limited right and the same is codified, but it is the foundation of a fair trial, it was observed by their lordships that certain rights of accused flow both from codified law as well as equitable concepts of constitutional jurisdiction, and substantial variation to such procedure would frustrate the very basis of a fair trial. Now, why is fair trial so necessary, my friends? I would like to say on this point that right from independence of this country to a very till the after the adoption of Constitution, the Part 3 of the Constitution, the 1964 judgment on how Article 21 is to be interpreted, but the landmark judgment comes for the first time in somewhere in 1974 in E.P. Royappa's case. In E.P. Royappa, the Supreme Court for the first time said that, look here, the concept of equality under Article 14 cannot be cribbed, cannot be cabined, and cannot be constrained and to the traditional and doctrinaire limits of the classification doctrine, and adopting the concept of fair procedure as it is covenanted in 14th Amendment of American Constitution. It was said that anything which is unfair, anything which is unreasonable, anything which is unequal is antithesis of equality. That is where the fair process, or what is also called as due process of law, was originally, the seeds were sown in E.P. Royappa, and finally a full-blown judgment came in Maneka Gandhi's case, that famous passport detention, when they said that if any executive action is unfair, if it is unreasonable, it is totally in violation of Article 14 of the Constitution of India. And that is why the procedure established by law was read as due process of law. And there you go. All judgments coming after 1977 regarding fairness of prosecution, now it is believed fully and unequivocally that concept of a fair trial is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. Therefore, the fair trial will encompass fair disclosure of evidence. Now, my friends, let me take another couple of minutes because I feel that the learned Advocate General must also address this issue. So two of the cases I would like to speak about as a personal experience. One is Arushi Talwar Hemraj double murders, and one is Gurmeet Ram Rahim. In Arushi Talwar Hemraj double murders, I as a defense counsel was contended to face two kinds of evidences which I sought to rebut. One was ocular testimony in the statements under 161, and one was a piece of forensic evidence. You know, in every murder trial or serious crime trial, you will have the prosecution relying upon DNA evidence and prosecution relying upon biological evidence. Now we see that in almost CBI prosecutions are based upon surveillance. And, the moment an accused is arrested, his voice samples are taken, and then you have a voice expert coming in. But how do you rebut a voice evidence? How do you rebut a voice expert? How do you, after all, rebut a DNA expert? Now, what the prosecutors do on a daily basis is, in compliance of 207 regarding DNA, they'll give you a final chart. And in voice evidence, they'll give you a report. But what they will not give you is the basic databases on the basis of which the conclusions have been drawn. So what does the defense counsel do? You cannot rebut that testimony, I'm sorry, unless and until you are not supplied with the databases. So in Arushi Talwar, there was a DNA witness and I wanted the databases. The trial judge never gave me. I went to the High Court and we argued for 5 days. And my friends, that's a reported judgment. I'm sorry. Of 2013, coming from, because you just give me a minute, I'll have a glass of water.
गौरव जी अब देखें.
हाँ,
अब देखें.
All right, I'm back.
हाँ जी गौरव जी.
हाँ, अभी आपको ऑडिबल?
पहले से बेटर.
ऑडिबल? अच्छा, ओके, ठीक है. आपको कुछ अब सुनाई पड़ रहा है?
Should the learned Advocate General take over?
ये कहते हैं तनवीर जी आपको ही ज्यादा लेना पड़ेगा क्योंकि मिस्टर पुष्पेंद्र जहां है, there is no broadband, he is in Tehsil.
Okay.
And where he was in Tehsil, he is operating from a mobile. That is why we are having trouble. So primarily you will have to handle the show, but we will just have the blessings of Mr. Pushpendra. As and when he can feel that there is, it's more audible, etc., then we will ask him to pitch in. So primarily you will have to batten the show.
Okay, so taking it forward, my friends, I just referred to these two examples of how the fair disclosure or call for fair disclosure can be brought into play. So first I will relate my defense in Arushi Talwar Hemraj double murders. The issue at the stage of 207, I filed an application saying that, Your Honor, I want all the databases of the DNA experts on the basis of which they have come to a conclusion that on the Ballantine's whiskey bottle, which was found on the dining table in the apartment, there was a mixed partial profile of both the deceased. And I need to examine these databases in order to controvert or to corroborate or to find out whether the prosecution DNA expert coming from CFSL Delhi is actually giving a correct opinion or not. So the special judge at Ghaziabad had none of it, and he said nothing doing. I'm giving nothing which is beyond relied upon documents, and I don't know what is this DNA. I will see it during the course of the trial, and you can go wherever you want to go. No issues. Then I said nothing doing. First application I filed during the course of at the stage of 207. When the DNA expert came, I said, sir, that in order to cross-examine, I need the databases. He said, you will be only entitled to his report and nothing else. So at that time, we filed a petition that was dismissed. We took it to High Court. There was a notice in the petition, never came up for hearing in Allahabad. I was not arguing that. Somebody else was arguing. By the time, with whatever help, we could cross-examine. And finally, at the stage of defense, I went and I relied upon the Attorney General's guidelines of England, and also one judgment from United Kingdom, which is reported in 1997, All England Reports, page 29. And it's a very famous judgment called R versus Gary Adams and R versus Ellen James Doheny. And the exact guidelines given upon fair disclosure was that when the Crown or the prosecution chooses to rely upon any expert testimony during the course of the trial, they will have to give all databases upfront to the defense. And if they don't give, then that part of the evidence can never go into judicial domain or consideration. That aspect, my friends, you will find in the judgment of 2013. It's a reported judgment from Allahabad High Court titled Dr. Rajesh Talwar versus CBI. And I think the relevant paragraph I've opened in my mobile also. So I can just read 2 lines to all my friends as to how the Honorable High Court dealt with this issue. But interestingly, the final outcome was that I was provided all the High Court directed that all the databases of the DNA experts should be provided. And secondly, I should also be given an opportunity to call for a DNA expert in defense. And my DNA expert in defense came from England. Now, let me read my friends 2 lines. So the High Court in para 93 of this judgment returns a finding that the Learned Court of Appeal in England in context of DNA evidence has laid down following guidelines. First of all, whenever DNA evidence is to be adduced, the Crown should serve on defense details as to how the calculations has been carried out, which are sufficient to enable the defense to scrutinize the basis of the calculations. The Forensic Science Service.
Tanveerji, our team has shared the relevant para on the screen.
Okay, very well, wonderful. And you would see that the DNA evidence, the Forensic Science Service would make available to a DNA expert, if requested, the databases upon which the calculations are based.
Apurv, can you make Apurv, can you make the font slightly bigger? Yes, you can continue, Tanveer.
Yes, I got it. Thank you very much. Then any issue of expert evidence should be identified, and if possible, my friends can read it. In a general perspective, the issue is why fair disclosure. You see, tomorrow in a murder trial or in a rape trial, today, DNA has such a huge significance. If, for example, the DNA evidence is relied upon by the prosecution and the defense is not supplied with any databases, how are you supposed to confront or cross-examine the DNA expert? How are you supposed to rebut his evidence? What kind of a fair disclosure will that be? So in Arushi Talwar is a standout case where we were able to convince the Honorable High Court, though at the stage of defense evidence, in order to have the databases for the defense expert to study the databases, to study the report of the prosecution expert, and then give a report in defense and come to the court and testify. In addition, my friend, my friends, the other example I would like to give is the judgment passed by Honorable Justice Daya Chaudhary of Punjab. 18 and in
Mr. Tanveer, you will have just to repeat it because I suppose there was some disturbance. I had muted you for some time. Yes.
Okay. Now I will start. So as far as Arushi Talwar fair disclosure is concerned, I just stated from para 89 and 90. Vikas was so helpful in having those portions right on the screen. The second case, my friends, I would like to relate to on a practical ground reality is Gurmeet Ram Rahim's mass castration case, which is going on before a judicial magistrate first class at Panchkula district courts. So a charge sheet is filed. I am engaged. I go down and I see that investigating officer has recorded the statement of 126 witnesses. But they are only 6 statements under 161 are supplied and 120 are not supplied. In addition, there are some medical reports which are mentioned in the charge sheet. Those are also not supplied. The issue again arose that whether I am entitled to, now my clients gave me an instruction that, sir, all these 161 statements which have been recorded are actually all in exculpatory in nature. And the CBI is deliberately, concealing this evidence so that, they can rely upon only that evidence and nothing else and carry out with the prosecution. I filed an application under at the stage of 207. The application which I usually file is 207 read with 91. And why do I do it? My friends, I'll just pause here for a moment. In Manu Sharma case and Shashikala's case, the Supreme Court went ahead and said that the limitations which are in 173 subclause 5 are not to be read into the provisions of 207. So 207 will have to be given an expansive interpretation so as to encompass full disclosure of exculpatory evidence before the learned trial court with an intention and with an objective that whosoever is put to the sword of prosecution is tried fairly. So, and the application came to be dismissed. I petitioned the High Court, another story. At the beginning, the Honorable High Court did not have much on a take and they were on the verge of dismissing this case. Finally, I was able to, convince their ladyships. And at page 12 of this judgment, my friends, the Honorable High Court was of the considered opinion after considering what? I started from Pulukori Kotaya, came to Purshorat Jethanand, then went to Habib Mohammed, then went to Manu Sharma, Shashikala, Kamal Ahmed, Mohammed Vakil, and finally, the Honorable High Court said, in case investigating officer withholds the evidence collected by him, the High Court, the accused has the right to rely upon that evidence and tell the court to take that evidence into account while framing the charges. That is the judgment, a governing judgment, which is coming from the Honorable High Court of Punjab and Haryana in Gurmeet Ram Rahim versus CBI, that is criminal CRMM 45571 of 2018, my friends.
Tanveer, before we proceed, few people have to go for Rosa. They wanted to ask some questions, though it is in breach of what general hygiene conditions we maintain.
Yes.
Advocate Mehak, I will try to unmute her. She can ask.
Yes, please go ahead.
Mehak.
Hello. Sir, my question is for Tanveer, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
आपको
do you
क्वेश्चन
think...
तनवीर सर को पूछने पड़ेंगे क्योंकि कौरव के वहां थोड़ी सी डिफिकल्टीज आ रही हैं, दो ही इज ट्राइंग टू जॉइन बैक.
जी सर, ठीक है. ये वाला क्वेश्चन इज फॉर तनवीर सर क्योंकि you have handled several high profile cases. So sir, do you think media trial affects certain cases?
No, Mehak, thank you for your question. Media trial, ordinarily should not affect a judge. But, we cannot, there is no gainsaying on the fact that judges, also at the end of the day are human beings, and they are amenable to, some influence wherever it may be coming from. So ordinarily it should not. But as, counsels appearing in the courts, our duty sacrosanct is that we have to fight and, contest the case on behalf of the accused or the prosecution, as the case may be, to the best of our abilities and on the basis of the evidence which is there on record or which you may call on record. Ultimately, a court of law, will be driven only by evidence. See, Arushi Talwar is an example of something.
But sir, do you think it's tougher for the attorney who's representing the accused in certain cases?
Yes,
Like you were also dealing with Mr. Sengar's case, and
I am. It is. You see, a media hyped trial presents its own challenges. Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible, but not visible.
Media hyped trial presents its own challenges. But then, what is a lawyer? What lawyer is a lawyer who refuses to take a challenging brief? So at the end of the day, you must live up to the challenge and believe in your abilities to defend the accused on the basis of evidence which is there on record. Because ultimately, before one court or another court, it is the evidence which will do the talking. You see, Arushi Talwar may have resulted in a conviction at Ghaziabad. 4 years down the line, the CBI got one of the most horrendous strictures, ever in independent India. The trial judge was also taken to cleaners, and both the accused were comprehensively exonerated. So ultimately, Mehek, what you must remember is that you win a criminal case. A defense counsel wins a criminal case in trial court alone. If you win the case on evidence, you have won it. You may run into a judge or an atmosphere where your clients unfortunately may get a conviction. But if you won the case on evidence before the High Court, there will certainly be a turnaround in your favor. That's what I believe.
But sir, just one last question, sir. Thank you, by the way. But I have read an article in the week which says that your appeal claims that the court misread the phone locations. How is it even possible that the court misread the phone locations of the accused? Like, can you please elaborate? And is it true?
Yes. You see, what has the tragedy in Kuldeep Singh Sengar's, Mehek, you are now referring to Kuldeep Singh Sengar in the Unnao rape case.
Yes, sir. I read an article in the Week magazine, ultimately, some 5 days after the conviction.
Let me give you a slightly insight, though it takes time. You see, the alibi of Kuldeep Singh Sengar was, comprehensively investigated by the CBI and was endorsed. And the call detail records and cell tower positions, as a matter of fact, were relied upon documents. Since those were relied upon documents and it is in public domain, though now a pending issue before the Honorable High Court in an appeal which I have lodged. So what the trial judge did in his judgment, I found, is that the trial court judge, misread the cell tower location charts and the numbers. The cell tower, location chart number is usually a 1920 digit. And there was a confusion.
Yes, sir.
In the manner in which the tower charts were reproduced, in consequence of which the trial judge, ran into a very horrendous finding. He said that, Mr. Sengar, upon my assimilation, you are carrying 2 mobile phones, and one phone is at a distance of 8 kilometers from another. But that's a very, very strong, unbelievably a reading error. Because had he read those call charts properly, both mobiles were in my pocket, and that's a tragedy. So when we are going to argue the appeal, we will open this evidence before the Honorable Division Bench in High Court, and I believe that Kuldeep Singh Singh, to the best of my understanding, was innocent, is innocent, and should remain innocent.
I hope to see this in the High Court, sir. Though I do not know how such a big blunder could be committed. Like, I was shocked when I was going through the article.
Let's leave it. Let's leave it to the fate. Let's leave it to the argument which is yet to start. So we can take it forward subsequently. Can I have the next question, please?
Okay, thank you.
Vikas bhai, can I have the next question? If I am audible.
I'm sorry, because I was talking to Mr. Pushpin.
No,
Sir, how the trials in which burden is on the accused to prove that he's innocent, like rape, economic offences, is different from other trials?
Oh, yes. A very important question, Vikas bhai, great pertinence. Normally, if one has to understand the theory and jurisprudence of burdens best, I recommend my friends a judgment of 1961. It's called as Custodian Evacuee Property, 3 judges bench, and a wonderful, brilliant discourse in para 5 of that judgment. I use it all the time, whenever I am to argue the theory of burdens. So fundamentally, what we must understand, which is unchanged, is that what is, in synchrony with the concept and basic postulate of presumption of innocence, is the permanent legal burden upon the prosecution to prove the guilt of the accused beyond reasonable doubt. But there are statutory burdens. For example, statutory burden under Section 24 of the PMLA, 114A of Indian Evidence Act in concept of 376 after the Nirbhaya judgment, the burdens under POCSO, burdens under NDPS Act. The statutory burdens, Vikas bhai and my all friends, are to be rebutted, or even 106 of the Indian Evidence Act, are to be rebutted by the accused, not beyond reasonable doubt, but only on preponderance of probabilities. How do you discharge this burden? For discharging this burden, you can rely upon the charge sheet filed, the complaint filed, the examination and cross-examination of the prosecution witnesses, the circumstances of the case, the presumptions under 114, direct defense evidence, or forensic evidence, cross-examinations. Each and everything can be called into play to rebut the reverse burden. So a reverse burden is statutory, but it is not that it is not rebuttable at all. So the burden of the prosecution will remain will be beyond reasonable doubt, but the burden on the accused will only be on preponderance of probabilities. A preponderance of probabilities, we all understand, my friends, is just like to prove a civil case before a court of competent civil jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Next question, Vikas bhai.
Yeah, no. Actually, we were trying that we can take it live on Facebook also. Probably we have gone live.
Sure.
How to conduct cross-examination of a witness effectively? What is your key take to that?
Okay, wonderful question. For conducting an effective cross-examination of any witness, you have two fundamental tools. One is the witness. In all situations, or except police cops, will have a prior statement. So you will call into play the concept of contradiction and confrontation and contradiction with a prior statement. And just as I read in Justice A.M. Thipsay's judgment, para 33, is effective discharge of the cross-examiner's rights under 155(3), read with 145 of the Indian Evidence Act. So confrontation is a huge tool. So if by the means of confrontation with a previous statement, you are able to draw a contradiction which goes to the root of the matter, consider your client as good as acquitted. Second is that every witness is to be prepared well in advance, one by one. So you can have whether the witness is a witness of fact, or the witness is a forensic expert, or a witness is a cop, then he will have his own theory. You will have a counter theory. So you would be able to understand from the witness's prior statement that what exactly, he wants to prove. So at this stage of investigation, or even at the stage of trial, after reading the charge sheet, you will also get a very sound feedback from your own clients, which will enable you to prepare for witnesses well in advance. The second important aspect is that you have to give your defense to the witness by the form of suggestions right from the word go. Now, your defense cannot come into play for the first time at 233, lest the court says that, Mr. Counsel, this defense is an afterthought. So effective cross-examination is prepare a chart of contradictions. Sometimes you will have a witness who has a 161, he has a 164. In a rape case, you will always have a 164 and a 161. If they are at variance, it is for you to exploit it and have contradictions on record. I recommend, a couple of days I gave a talk on how to conduct a murder trial. So I re-emphasize that one cannot understand the concept of contradiction if one doesn't read the constitutional bench judgment of Supreme Court in the famous judgment of Tehsildar Singh. So I recommend, please don't read the Supreme Court judgment alone. Read the full bench of Allahabad High Court and read the constitutional bench of Supreme Court. It's a Bible for a cross-examining lawyer. And once you have a grip on Tehsildar, you have a grip on your case, I'm sure that you will be able to demolish the witnesses in the court.
तनवीर जी, ये लोग पूछ रहे हैं कि वॉइस सैंपल्स, if there is only CDR और original device नहीं है पुलिस के पास.
Oh, wonderful.
And police take these examples. What is your take on Ritesh Sinha?
Yes, see, Ritesh Sinha now stands decided. So it is, the law of the land. And I was always expecting that Ritesh Sinha will never go in favor of defense. You see, because if an accused is to give his semen sample, if the accused is to give his biological fluid, if the accused is to give his blood, if the accused is to give his skin sample, how can you say that accused will not, give his voice sample? Because ultimately, now there is technology to identify and to locate a person by analysis of his voice also. But voice is not very far from DNA. So just like in DNA, you have databases and then you have electropherograms. In voice also, you have databases and then you have spectrograms. So the moment you are contended with the proposition of cross-examining a voice expert, two persons usually come from CBI in Delhi. One is a guy called D.K. Tanwar, Tanwar, and one was a retired director called Dr. Dangi. Yes, Dangi was a great forensic. I think he's available even for defense. There are many experts who testify for defense in voice. Two cardinal principles there is, when voice is filed and relied upon by prosecution, go up to Supreme Court to ask the databases. Without databases, if you are to spend $10 million and get one of the best voice experts from, one of the best voice experts in America is a professor who comes from University of Colorado at Denver. And I happened to, talk to him regarding one case once. And he's quite a very costly expert. He will also be able to do nothing lest you have the databases first. So first we fight for the databases, then we get our expert. The expert will prepare in conjunction with the defense lawyer cross-examination for the prosecution expert. We will try and basically, demolish him in the cross-examination. Then we will get our expert in defense evidence at the stage of 233. That's how we will go. Now, if the prosecution does not have the original, so you're talking about something which we in law called as primary evidence, secondary evidence. Now, where primary evidence is available, secondary evidence cannot be relied upon. That, you as defense counsels can easily kill. That, for example, I have a mobile in my hand and there is a tape recorded conversation. Now, this becomes the primary evidence. If I connect it by a wire and transfer a conversation into my laptop and burn it on a CD, it becomes secondary evidence. Lest I bring the primary evidence to the court as a piece of evidence, the voice evidence can never be looked into, it can never be relied upon. So make it sure, be sure that whether the prosecution is relying upon primary evidence or not. If they are coming with secondary evidence, don't talk. Say that this whole evidence is inadmissible in nature. Thank you. I don't want to even cross-examine. Primary evidence अगर नहीं आई तो voice prosecution के किसी के भी काम नहीं आएगी.
ये तनवीर जी आप ये थोड़ा समझाएं ये प्राइमरी और सेकेंडरी एविडेंस क्योंकि कई लॉ के स्टूडेंट्स भी हैं. What is your take? What are the distinguishing features for the primary and secondary evidence?
Well, you see, for my friends, you must go into Indian Evidence Act and have a look at section 60 and have a look at section 62, and then go to section 63, 64, and 65. 62 says that any evidence which is documentary in nature has to be proved only when the original is placed before the court or part of original. The electronic evidence in law is also documentary evidence. So if something is in the nature of an electronic evidence, say a voice file or a picture or something which is stored in a video camera or some film or something of that sort, that is also to be proved in terms of 62, 63, and 65. Now, the only exception is that where the primary evidence is not in a position to be called to the court. For example, when we talk about cold detailed records. Now, the telecom servers usually are as huge that they will occupy a whole building space. That is why when we see at section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act, it clearly says in subsection 4 that you will rely upon, secondary evidence when the primary evidence is not transportable to the court at all. But in other cases, the primary evidence has to be. A simple example मैं आपको ये बताता हूँ साहब. अगर मुल्जिम ने कंप्लेनेंट को चिट्ठी लिखी, तो साहब वो चिट्ठी के जरिए अगर हैंडराइटिंग साबित करना है, तो एज पर सेक्शन 62 ओरिजिनल चिट्ठी अदालत के रिकॉर्ड पे होनी चाहिए. फोटोकॉपी से साबित नहीं होगा. Otherwise, the mechanism is if somebody wants to prove secondary evidence, there is a mechanism under section 63. You will have to comply with the regulations and requirements of section 3. But one important aspect, for electronic evidence, now it is well settled after PV Anwar's case, that electronic evidence cannot be proved by the mechanism of secondary evidence at all. That is why for the cold detailed records, there has to be a certificate under section 65B. But for primary evidence, which is portable means which you can hand over to the IO, which you can get to the court as a piece of evidence, section 65B certificate will not work. आपको अदालत में प्राइमरी एविडेंस, अगर लैपटॉप है साहब, तो लैपटॉप को तो मैं ये नहीं कहूंगा ना कि ये अदालत में जा ही नहीं सकता. तो लैपटॉप अदालत में लाना पड़ेगा, फोन अदालत में लाना पड़ेगा, बाकी एविडेंस अदालत में लानी पड़ेगी. लेकिन अगर कोई इतनी बड़ी एविडेंस है जो ट्रांसपोर्ट ही नहीं हो सकती, दैट विल बी कवर्ड by the exception of 65B. That, my friends, is the difference between primary evidence and secondary evidence. Please go through these sections, read the judgments. They are very enlightening. They show us finally as trial lawyers how we are required to prove a particular fact or a particular fact and issue before a court of competent jurisdiction.
Alok Vagrecha, how do you explain the concept of fair disclosure with respect to those documents with respect to which the state claims privilege?
If a privilege again, is a very, very different concept. You see, for example, attorney-client documentation is privileged. It is, at the end of the day, the privilege will not overrun and override or steamroll the concept of fair trial. If a particular document goes to the root of an indictment and will prove before the court that the accusation against an accused is totally unfounded or it is mala fide, then privilege will not be a help to the prosecution at all in resisting an attempt from the accused to have such exculpatory evidence to be placed on record. The privilege can never overrun the basic postulate of the criminal jurisprudence that somebody is to be convicted and condemned only after a fair trial, quote unquote. And fair trial now invariably, unquestionably encompasses fair of evidence. I even go on to say that why is there a bar in CRPC, in having the entire case diary of the IO before the court? After all, the case diary of the IO is not some sacrosanct document, or it is not an official secret of Government of India, which will sabotage its foreign relationships, its relationship in the international arena. The case diary, emanates from the indictment of a person. The case diary of the IO should be there for the perusal of the Defense Counsel also. And my friends, time will come when the entire case diary will also be there although the court can look at it at any point of time, but the Defense Counsel cannot. So if the court can look at a case diary, the Defense Counsel should also have the privilege of looking at the case diary. How do I know that the investigating officer in his case diary has not manipulated the statements, has not changed the statements, has not torn the pages? अगर पेज नंबरिंग भी उनकी बराबर होती है, और साहब जब भी आप मुल्जिम को मैजिस्ट्रेट साहब के सामने पेश करते हैं तो आपने अपनी केस डायरी भी साइन करानी है. कई बार तो आप करते ही नहीं है, कभी आप बाद में पुराना एक पन्ना घुसेड़ देते हैं. So therefore, it's time at the end of the day that even the case diary of the IO should be there for perusal of the Defense Counsel. And why not?
You spoke that the documents which were part of investigation but were not filed / or supplied to
Yes.
defense in compliance of section 207. In that case, at the stage of arguing on charge of the defense,
Yes.
Make an application to call for those enlisted documents.
Yes.
And the query is,
Yes.
can at the stage of charge defense can produce it under what provision of or not? What is the stage?
Sorry, can you please repeat that question? Last part I didn't hear.
Can at the stage of framing of charge defense can produce it under what provision or not, and then at what stage?
Any evidence which is in your knowledge, and you firmly believe that it is investigated by the IO at the stage of charge, as I said, that the stage initially is cognizance under section 190, summoning under 204, the next is 207. And after 207, you are immediately at the stage of 227 and 228 since trial. Now, the moment you are in knowledge that there is an exculpatory evidence which the investigating authorities want to hide, you please file an application under 207, reg with 91, and rely upon the judgment passed by Honorable Justice Daya Chaudhary in Gurmeet Ram Rahim's case.
Apurv, can you share the judgment?
Yes.
APS Sisodia. Many times, women have registered a report even after a long time after the criminal incident in which their statement is considered credible. Then should there not be any limitation to examine the same?
I'm sorry, because I couldn't get the question.
It is his take. We will only take questions which are logical rather than the opinions of both the panelists. That is for the clarification, because some people are asking what is your take on certain particular judge. What should be the key approach in a serial murder case in an appeal? And if it is apparent that the investigation is not done properly, then whether the concept of fair disclosure would be applicable or not?
Why not? You see, fair disclosure, as we say now, encompasses is it's the art of covenant of a fair trial, if I can use the word. Fair disclosure is the arc of covenant of a fair trial. And please refer to Muhammad or 1954. It is also my friend's covenant to Amal Ahmad Muhammad Wakil. I will give you a little paragraph. Yes. Amal Ahmad Muhammad Wakil, Muhammad's case is referred in para 50. So if you go through para 50 of Ahmad Muhammad Wakil, Habib Muhammad is a standout judgment. So if one of the grounds is that, my lord, there was no fair disclosure and this caused tremendous prejudice to the accused leading to his conviction, it will definitely be a ground of appeal. And why not? It should be pressed into service.
Mr. Pushendra, I'm apologetic because there is some buzzing, but we will unmute you once we take your words. My apologies on behalf of the team. Question. Once the accused is granted the tender of pardon to accomplice, then why, as per section 306(4)(b), he shall remain in custody until the termination of the trial, whereas the normal accused has right of bail? Isn't this provision biased?
Well, you see, the purpose of various provisions, has been thought out by the legislature in a particular manner. Now, there is a clear dichotomy, between provisions of 306 and 307 of CRPC. I and one of my colleagues, very able colleague, Mr. Dhruv Gupta, we happened to argue a case out of Ghaziabad, Allahabad, and Supreme Court. And we addressed on this issue. So 306 subclause 4, the basic jurisprudence emanates, is that, two accused. Let's talk about, for example, Sheena Bora murder case and the indictment of Indrani Peter Mukherjee, for who, I have been engaged by her, and I went to Bombay a couple of times to defend her. Now, one of the accused there is the driver Shamal Rai. Now, Shamal Rai is charge sheeted. He's an accused, and he files an application for approvership. And the concept of keeping the approver or the accused who turned into an approver in custody is that if you, grant him a bail or do not keep him in custody, there is a very high chance that if he is out, he may be influenced or he may be murdered. So the traditional concept has always been that since an approver is a very different kind of a witness, the approver is not a witness under 161. He is not a witness, from 154 CRPC to 173. He's fundamentally an accused, and he, being an accused, is given a pardon only when he makes a full disclosure. So, upon making a full disclosure, the court is also looking at the fact that if you release him, maybe he is influenced, maybe he is intimidated, maybe he is murdered. So, better, he testify once he is in custody. So that's purely protective jurisprudence and nothing else. If the person is bailed out, very well. But there is strength in the proposition of my learned friend who has raised this vital question. Because now you have a very strong witness protection regime. You saw it in Kuldeep Singh Sengar's case, that calling into play the judgment of Mahendra Chawla versus state passed by the Supreme Court, saying that where there are these horrendously high profile or cases where the victims are under murder threats, you must immediately, the IO must take steps in terms of Mahendra Chawla and provide them gunmen, provide them security, provide them safe houses. That's a concept all over the world. But we in India, the law enforcement machinery is, the least priority for the government. And how much of money is, spent on courts? The politicians never like the lawyers because they say that the lawyers will tomorrow throw them in jails. So there is not much of an expenditure here, and the government does not treat the legal profession as a great priority. But if you take Mahendra Chawla's judgment into contemplation, I think there has to be a relook at 306 subclause 4. A person who has now become a witness, why should he be in custody? You take him out and hand him over to a witness protection regime mechanism and let him testify.
Manish Mittal, can case diary be obtained under RTA?
Oh, the problem of privilege and, the problem of the statutory covenant. And you can't call for a case diary under the RTI, but you can sort of, at some point of time, raise this, escalate fair disclosure to such an extent, which says that the case diary should also be a part of 207. And the defense counsel should be given an opportunity to examine the case diary for any kind of foul play. And if there is foul play, on that foul play or, alone, a person is entitled to be discharged. You see, हमारे मुल्क में unfortunately in criminal jurisprudence what has happened is that systematically the Supreme Court is ensuring that he who is put to a criminal trial will only get acquitted. That's why you are seeing a series of no discharges. Earlier there used to be a concept of discharge. Now all those judgments which provided for discharge have been diluted. So unfortunately then a person is put to the rigmarole of facing an arduous criminal trial, which in certain circumstances is totally unjustified. I agree with my learned friends. A brilliant question. I think that time is not very far when one day, in recognition of this sacrosanct principle of fair disclosure, the Supreme Court may say that the defense counsel should look at the case diary as well.
Tanveer ji, वैसे तो you have explained in all details because of Pushendra, he has pitched in large number of participants from MP. आप हिंदी में ये fair disclosure को कैसे बताएंगे, क्योंकि तहसील से भी काफी वकील आए हुए हैं.
बिल्कुल जो मेरे भाई तहसील से है,
no offenses to them, but मेरे को लगता है कि अगर थोड़ा हिंदी में बता दिया जाए तो उनके लिए बेहतर होता है.
कोई बात नहीं है, क्योंकि वैसे ही जो है मैं वैसे ही जिले का और कचेरी का वकील हूं, तो डेली ही डिस्ट्रिक्ट जो कोर्ट में जाके भी हिंदी में बहस करता हूं, उर्दू में भी बहस करता हूं और कभी कभी शेर व शायरी भी करता हूं. तो साहब फेयर डिस्क्लोजर का मतलब कि जितनी भी एविडेंस जो है केस के विवेचक ने विवेचना के दौरान अपनी कलेक्ट करी और अपनी हासिल करी, जो बयानात लिखे, जो कागज जब्त करे, वो सारे कागजात, वो सारे बयानात वो माननीय अदालत के रिकॉर्ड पे रख दे. चाहे वो बयानात जो है मुल्जिम के खिलाफ है, चाहे वो उसके फेवर में है. इस तरह की प्रक्रिया वो अडॉप्ट ना करे और के साथ जो बयानात खिलाफ है वही दे दे, लेकिन जो बयान और जो विवेचना और जो साक्ष्य मुल्जिम के हक में आए हैं वो मुल्जिम को कभी सप्लाई ना किया जाए. आखिरकार एक विवेचक का एक ऐसा कदम मैं आप अपने दोस्तों के लिए, एक बड़ी मशहूर और बेहतरीन जजमेंट राजस्थान हाई कोर्ट से आई है. मेरे दोस्तों, आप कृपया करके मैं जजमेंट की साइटेशन दे देता हूं. एक बड़ी बेहतरीन जजमेंट है, नीलेश जैन बनामे स्टेट ऑफ राजस्थान, और रिपोर्टेड जजमेंट है 2006 क्रिमिनल लॉ जर्नल 2151. और क्या बेहतरीन लफ्जों में जज साहब ने ये बात कही है कि इसको अंग्रेजी में पढ़ूंगा और उसके बाद में एक रामायण और महाभारत में भी इसमें एक बड़ा एक अहम बात लिखी गई है, तो आपकी इजाजत लूंगा. At times the prosecution has used the loophole in law in the garb of using the power under 173 subclause 6 of the code to withhold those documents which weaken their case against the accused. However, such a free exercise of power is against the spirit of the code. Once a person has been accused of commission of an offense, it is for the investigating agency to discover if in fact the offense has been committed by the said offender or by somebody else. Like an archaeologist, the investigator must brush layers of evidence to reach the truth. But in his endeavor to book the accused, he cannot collect one-sided evidence and present it to the court. For investigating agency has to be impartial in its investigation. Moreover, the prosecutor cannot convert himself into a persecutor by submitting one side of the investigation and withholding the relevant portion which would favor the accused person. Neither the क्या बेहतरीन लफ्जों में हाई कोर्ट ने कहा, neither the investigating agency nor the prosecution is supposed to claim Ashwadham Maro without informing the court as to who has died, the man or the elephant. तो क्या खूबसूरत में भारतीय इतिहास महाभारत और रामायण से लिए हुए ये ऐतिहासिक कहानियों को जज साहब ने क्या खूब मिलाप करा इसका फेयर डिस्क्लोजर के साथ कि देखिए साहब, इन्वेस्टिगेटिंग ऑफिसर की क्या जिम्मेदारी है कि अगर आपने ये पाया कि मुल्जिम बेगुनाह है तो वो साक्ष्य भी तो आप अदालत में देंगे या उसको छुपाएंगे. यही फेयर डिस्क्लोजर है.
Mr. Tanveer and Mr. Pushendra, the questions are pouring, but we make it a point that we should wrap it off by 7:30, but because of certain issues, वी हैव गॉन बियॉन्ड 7:30. मैं पुरुषेंद्र जी को अनम्यूट करता हूं, उनसे उनके विचार लेते हैं इस सारे का, और उनसे ये भी वादा लेते हैं कि अगली बार दोबारा आना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि आज तो कभी हम सुन पाए कभी नहीं सुन पाए.
आई एम सॉरी विकास जी, यहाँ कुछ लो नेटवर्क के कारण. हेलो, आप मुझे सुन पा रहे हैं?
हाँ जी सुन रहे हैं.
हाँ.
हेलो.
को सुनने का मौका मिला तो बहुत ही एनलाइटनिंग और बहुत ही जो एक हमारे सारे एडवोकेट्स को उनके प्रोफेशन में इस फेयर डिस्क्लोजर के कॉन्सेप्ट को जितनी बारीकी से मीर साहब ने रखा है, मुझे लगता है कि आज जितने लोगों ने भी मीर साहब को सुना है, वो ट्रायल कंडक्ट करते समय निश्चित रूप से मीर साहब के आज के जो कॉन्सेप्ट है उससे लाभान्वित होंगे. मैं आपका धन्यवाद करूंगा कि आपने मुझे भी सुनने का मौका मिला, और आगे फिर कभी आपसे जुड़ करके फिर से एक बार बातचीत करेंगे. आई एम सॉरी, आज कुछ लो कनेक्टिविटी के कारण मैं शायद आपसे ठीक से कनेक्ट नहीं हो पाया, लेकिन आगे फिर कभी प्रयास करेंगे. आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद विकास जी, और मीर साहब को भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
पुरुषेंद्र जी, धन्यवाद से पहले आई वुड लाइक टू आस्क, जैसे हम बाकी सबसे जितने भी हमारे यहाँ की नोट स्पीकर्स आते हैं उनसे ये पूछते हैं कि अगर एक सक्सेसफुल वकील बनना हो, जैसे आपने इतने यंग एज पे बने हैं, तो उसका क्या राज है? वो आपके ये फुटस्टेप्स कैसे करें हमारी बार भी उससे एनरिच्ड हो जाए?
देखिए विकास जी, मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि चाहे वकालत हो या कोई और प्रोफेशन हो, अगर आपको आगे बढ़ना है तो सिर्फ एकमात्र रास्ता होता है मेहनत करना, सही समय पर आपको मेहनत करना. जब आप
किसी ने एडवाइस किया, क्योंकि आप लो नेटवर्क पे आप अपनी वीडियो बंद कर दें और फिर बोलने कहते हैं उससे ज्यादा अच्छा सुनाई देगा. एक उसको भी एक्सपेरिमेंट करके देख लेते हैं.
अच्छा, वीडियो
बंद करने पे.
अच्छा, वीडियो बंद करके
वो करें, क्योंकि फिर कम होगा, आपको सुन लेंगे हम. आपकी आवाज के ही कायल हैं. हाँ जी.
हाँ, अभी आप सुन पा रहे हैं मुझे?
हाँ, बेटर है.
तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि वकालत में आने के बाद एटलीस्ट 5 इयर्स, आपके जो इनिशियल 5 ईयर होते हैं, उन इनिशियल 5 इयर्स में आपको जितना आप अधिक से अधिक ज्ञान अर्जित कर सकते हैं, अपने सीनियर्स के माध्यम से, अदालतों के माध्यम से, आपको उन 5 सालों में अपने आप को पूरे तरीके से वकालत में ही जीना, वकालत में ही आपको अपना सारा कुछ देखना, ऐसे 5 साल अगर आप अपने इस प्रोफेशन को देते हैं, तो मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि आफ्टर 5 इयर्स यू विल फाइंड योरसेल्फ एट सम लेवल. इनिशियल 5 इयर्स में आप क्या करते हैं वकालत में आने के बाद, इस पर बहुत कुछ डिपेंड करता है. And second important point which I would like to advise to all my the friends is, you must concentrate on work and work only. You forget about everything, whether you are getting recognition or not. The recognition will come automatically.
Great.
थैंक यू पुरुषेंद्र जी.
थैंक यू विकास जी. थैंक यू.
अभी आप इधर ही रहें. आपके एक प्रिय दोस्त लोकेश भी हमारे साथ प्लेटफॉर्म पे हैं, वो भी अभी थोड़ी देर ऑन एयर रहेंगे. तनवीर जी, व्हाट इज योर कॉल?
यस, पहले तो पुरुषेंद्र जी का बहुत बहुत हम इनके आभारी हैं कि इन्होंने अपना समय निकाल के जो है आज हमारे साथ यहाँ जुड़े, और ये हमारे लिए बड़ा लाभदायक है. मुलाकात की जिंदगी में बहुत बड़ी बात होती है, एंड ये एक वकीलों के लिए जरूरी है विकास भाई के एक नॉलेज शेयरिंग प्लेटफॉर्म पे हम बात करें, क्योंकि आखिरकार जो चीज हमने अपने सीनियरों से सीखी, ये हमने आके अपने जो यंगर कोलीग्स हैं, जो भाई हैं, बहन हैं, उनको आगे हमने ये नॉलेज शेयरिंग में शामिल करके उनके साथ जो है अभी नॉलेज शेयर करनी है। तो पुरुषेंद्र सिंह का बहुत बहुत शुक्रगुजार। मेरा ये मानना है विकास भाई के लिटिगेशन के अब भारतवर्ष में क्या जी कि अब दो तरह की प्रैक्टिस जो है हमारे लीगल फील्ड में अब डेवलप हुई है। एक तो जो है कि भाई जो कोर लिटिगेटिंग लॉयर्स हैं, भाई अदालत में जाने वाला वकील है, और एक है जो वकील कभी अदालत जाते ही नहीं, या जो एक ट्रांजैक्शनल प्रैक्टिस है जो जिसको कॉर्पोरेट प्रैक्टिस भी कहते हैं, और अपना एक अलग सा उनका स्ट्रीम है। बहुत अच्छी बात है। और जो अदालत का वकील है, मेरा ये मानना है कि अदालत जाने वकील को पहले 5 से 6 साल बल्कि 7 साल केवल ट्रायल कोर्ट में ही कॉन्सेंट्रेट करना चाहिए, क्योंकि जब तक आप ट्रायल कोर्ट नहीं जाएंगे तब तक आप इस बात की शिक्षा नहीं ले पाएंगे कि साहब अदालत में एक मुकदमे में एविडेंस कैसे चलती है, कैसे तोड़ी जाती है, जिरे कैसे होती है, और साहब मुकदमे में गवाह कैसे आते हैं, आपने मुकदमे की स्ट्रेटजी कैसे बनानी है। आप एक अपील भी एक बेहतरीन तरीके से तभी आप अदालत में पेश कर सकते हैं यदि तो आप पहले ट्रायल में आपकी जो है अच्छी पकड़ है और आपकी महारता है। यू शुड हैव अ वेरी साउंड ग्रिप। क्यों हमें मैं अपने यंगर कोलीग्स को हमेशा ये कहता हूं कि साहब फर्स्ट यू टेक अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग एक्सपोजर ऑफ ट्रायल लॉ। ट्रायल लॉ में ये लगता है कि साहब भाई जिले की अदालत है, साहब बड़ा कीचड़ है जी, छोटे छोटे लेन्स हैं वो है, लेकिन साहब जो है एक बड़ी पुरानी कहावत है कि कीचड़ में ही कमल खिलता। तो साहब दी ब्रिलियंट लॉयर्स ऑफ दिस कंट्री, जेठमलानी साहब जो है, जेठमलानी साहब नहीं होते अगर वो पहले जिरे के वकील नहीं होते। ये उन्हीं से हमने सुना है। मुझे सौभाग्य प्राप्त हुआ 2G स्पेक्ट्रम में वकील होने का, जहां पर एक मुलजिम की तरफ से वो वकालत कर रहे थे तो दूसरे मुलजिम की तरफ से मैं वकालत कर रहा था। उनका एक बड़ा रुतबा और स्टेचर था, और उन्हीं के लफ्जों में ये बात बता रहा हूं। तो इसलिए बड़ा जरूरी है कि आदमी जो है एथिकली काम करे, पहले ट्रायल का काम करे, उसके बाद में बाकी काम करे। तो जब भी कोई क्लाइंट आपके पास आएगा आप उसको बहुत अच्छी सलाह देने के हमेशा सक्षम रहेंगे, और हर अदालत में आपको कामयाबी मिलेगी, और अदालत से आपको सराहना भी मिलेगी। अदालत आपको रिकॉग्निशन भी देगी कि जो वकील मेरे सामने है उसकी कानून में और अपने सब्जेक्ट पे बहुत अच्छी पकड़ है।
लोगों की ये रिक्वेस्ट है, once you have said कि you also know somewhat share, कहते parting shot से पहले before Lokesh also comes in and says his words, few
देखिए अभी कोविड-19 जो है ये साहब जो है आजकल 1.5 महीने से हम घर पे ही हैं, लेकिन एक ऐसा दौर आया है, it has proved to be a great level। आप देखिए कि पूरी दुनिया ठप हो गई है, और आज देखें कि साहब हम में से कई लोग जो है भाई काफी रिलीजियस भी होते हैं, लेकिन आज एक बड़ा जमाना है कि साहब वेटिकन सिटी खाली है, मक्का मदीना खाली है, मंदिर मस्जिद भी खाली है। तो साहब मैं एक स्पिरिचुअलिटी के ऊपर जो है आपकी इजाजत से एक शेर मैं कहता हूँ कि गालिब साहब बड़े मशहूर अपने जमाने के सोशल थिंकर शायर थे। तो कभी कभी ड्रिंक भी करते थे। एक दिन ड्रिंक करे हुए किसी मस्जिद के अहाते में किसी आदमी ने कहा कि साहब यहाँ तो नमाज अदा होती है और साहब आप कोने में पेशाब कर रहे हैं, भाई किस किस्म के मुसलमान हैं आप। तो उन्होंने कहा कि ए वाइज यानी जैसे हम कहते हैं लर्नड लॉयर इज अ पर्शियन वर्ड फॉर बीइंग अ वेरी लर्नड मैन। तो उन्होंने कहा ए वाइज, पीने दे शराब मुझे मस्जिद के अहाते में, या वो जगह बता दे दुनिया में जहां खुदा नहीं।
वेरी गुड। वन मोर पासिंग शॉट।
तो साहब for our wonderful judges, because they are some phenomenal people. I have seen some wonderful judges coming from Delhi High Court. There is so much, we learn from judges, and there are so much, we learn from other people. But there are some people, एक हमारे में कहावत है कि आपके पाँव हमेशा जमीन पे रहने चाहिए। तो कभी अपने आप को आप जो है भी एक इंसान से ज्यादा ना समझे, कभी खुदा ना खास्ता अपने आप को खुदा ना समझे। तो एक शायर ने क्या खूब कहा कि किसी आदमी के लिए जिसके पांव जमीन पे ना रहे, और उनके संदर्भ में बात कही कि आपसे पहले जो यहाँ तख्ते नशी था, तख्ते नशी मने द वन हु वाज ऑक्यूपाइंग द थ्रोन बिफोर यू, कि आपसे पहले जो यहाँ तख्ते नशी था उसे भी खुद खुदा होने का यकीन था.
That was a wonderful. We will ask Lokesh to propose a vote of thanks, and my apology to Mr. Purushenth, because of the circumstances we are not being able to hear him, though it is a treat to hear him anytime as a lawyer, as a person participating in the various conferences, various seminars, various webinars. But as he has already promised us that he will come not only with a better bandwidth, but also with a better bang when we catch him on the next platform. Over to you, Lokesh.
One request. I just had a request for my friends, who might, be having some query and were not able to interact with me on the question and answer round. Please, you can put my email on the platform, और कोई भी मेरा younger friend, कोई भी दोस्त, कोई भी कुलीग, कोई भी सवाल हो तो मेरी ईमेल पे आप मेरे को ईमेल लिखें, मैं आपकी ईमेल का जवाब जरूर दूंगा.
I will ask your office people to just pitch in the email ID.
Yes. So I think some of my colleagues may be there, or you can just.
You can tell. Hello.
EXALLIANCE.Tanveer, my first name, TANVER @gmail.com. lexalliance.tanveer@gmail.com.
I will, Tanveerji, I will share, you just send me on my WhatsApp. I will share it in our groups.
Okay, no issues.
Because that will be very good for them. But even though you have come on this platform and thereafter you are extending your knowledge through the emails, the entire Beyond Law team would be too happy. Words are falling short for that.
It's a matter of personal pleasure because, first of all, we get to meet, we get to interact, we get to discuss, and ultimately, I have learned so much today. I have learned from the sessions which you have done with us. I've been, looking up, my mobile and listening to them very carefully. तो अगर कोविड-19 के लिए हम घर पे भी रहे हैं, लेकिन आप जैसे दोस्तों की मेहनत की वजह से मैं ये नहीं कहूँगा कि साहब कि हमारा वक्त जाया हुआ है, बल्कि हमें काफी ज्ञान की प्राप्ति हुई है.
We are again trying with Mr. Purushenth. Maybe the parting shot becomes very good. Mr. Purushenth, I am trying again. If we can, as a parting shot, we can hear you better. Yes, sir. Purushenth जी.
हाँ विकास जी.
हाँ जी.
हाँ विकास जी, मैं अभी जो आपको बोला मैं उसको फिर से रिपीट करता हूँ. मीर साहब का इस सब्जेक्ट पर जो एनलाइटनमेंट है, जो आपका उद्बोधन है, मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि सारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स ने इसको बहुत ठीक से सुना है और सभी को इसका लाभ मिलेगा और मेरा भी ज्ञान वर्धन हुआ है. मैं आपका और मीर साहब का दोनों का धन्यवाद करता हूं.
Thank you. Okay. Lokesh is a very young, dynamic lawyer out in Chandigarh, and he's a personal friend of yours also. It just transpired. He had sent a text message to me. He says that you are a very close friend of his. So Lokesh giving the vote of thanks from the sir. Lokesh.
Thank you, Vikas. On behalf of Beyond Law team, its founder Vikas Chandra, all the participants, I thank Mr. Tanveer Ahmed and
Lokesh, you would have to come closer to the mic. We are facing the same problem.
Now it is audible. Now it's all right.
Yes.
on behalf of Team Beyond Law, its founder Mr. Vikas Chatrat and its members and all the participants, I thank Shri Chandra Kaurav, Advocate General, as well Advocate General Madhya Pradesh, as well as Shri Tanveer Ahmed Mir for their wonderful session. Now, I was thinking that we will have both the views on the criminal disclosure, first the prosecution and then the defense, but we have been unlucky a bit and we couldn't hear the views of the prosecution, we could hear the views of the defense. But due to the session, the lockdown has been extended for 2 weeks and it will be rather vice versa this time. We have heard the defense first and now we will hear prosecution in the coming 2 weeks. I'll request Chandra Kaurav ji to make available one day because lockdown is going on for 2 weeks and if he can make available one day for us, then we will hear his defense counsel after hearing as a prosecution after hearing the defense.
Right.
So anyway, it has been very wonderful session and criminal trial has not been my cup of tea, but the way Mr. Tanveer Ahmed Mir has expressed and explained the technical aspects of the criminal trial in a simple language, even I, who is just an infant in this criminal law, was able to understand its technicality. So I must thank both of you again and will take it. Thank you.
The team of Mr. Tanveer has been kind enough. They have posted their email. So anybody who has a question, they can pose it. And with Mr. Prashant, we will only say that we are parting, but with a promise to catch up again. And same is with Tanveer. It was a wonderful session.
Yes.
And Mr. Prashant, we will say that we will come on a better bandwidth so that we can catch up. The entire enlightenment, the small ray of sun ray which has come to our house, we are quite sure that once you come with full sunlight, as they say, sunlight is the best disinfectant for anything. So your word of talk at any point of time would be wonderful for us. Thank you, everyone. Those who want to stay connected to us because we are having daily sessions, connect us on Instagram and Facebook page on Beyond Law CLC, or you can connect us on our WhatsApp for the latest updates. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Tanveer ji. Thank you, Pushpendra ji.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure, and I'll surely be keep following your programs, and whenever you call upon me to participate anytime on any subject to criminal prosecution, I will definitely join this platform. Thank you very much.
We couldn't have a more heartening news that both the keynote speakers have promised that they will come back again. It is just that whenever there is set, and we'll come with a better sunrise next time. Thank you, both of you. Thank you, the entire
Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.